Hey everyone, Nigel and Luke here, and welcome to another edition of Crimes of the Week International. Authorities in southern France say that they've got their work cut out for them this week, following the arrests of 3 suspects who they say were behind a multi-year string of thefts targeting first-class rail passengers. According to reports, the group of thieves, all of whom are said to be men, operated out of the city of Marseille and would carry out their crimes on several popular high-speed train routes. After purchasing legitimate first-class tickets, the suspects would wait for opportunities to steal luggage from other passengers, oftentimes while the train had made a stop and the victims had temporarily left their seats to stretch their legs. The thieves would then get off the train, and by the time the thefts were noticed, they would be long gone. It's said that the ringleader of the crimes frequently donned a wig and posed as a woman while carrying out the thefts, leading many reports to refer to the criminals as the Wig Gang. While the suspects are believed to have operated for as many as 6 years, police reportedly only started to catch on to what was happening in April of this year, after a train passenger reported the theft of a briefcase containing jewelry worth about $49,000 US. Authorities reviewed CCTV footage from the train, leading to a months-long investigation that recently culminated in the arrest of the 3 suspects. Though the men were not identified by name in any of the sources that we came across, it's said that they are ages 57, 47, and 40. As part of the investigation, police say that they managed to uncover an apartment in Marseille, which was used by the suspects to stash their stolen goods. There, authorities recovered about 150 pieces of luggage, as well as roughly $128,000 in cash, a watch worth an estimated $69,000, and multiple designer handbags, pairs of shoes, cameras, and pieces of jewelry. The total value of the items recovered is believed to be about $295,000. While the suspects have now been charged and are each reportedly facing up to 7 years in prison, police say that they still have a lot of work ahead of them. While they're hoping to return as many of the stolen valuables as possible, they say that there are likely well over 100 victims, many of whom do not live in France. At the current time, authorities say that they are continuing to work to track these victims down and have already reunited the expensive watch with its owner, a man from California who allegedly had it stolen while attending the Cannes Film Festival in 2019. Representatives from England's North Yorkshire Police say that a 53-year-old driving instructor has been sentenced to nearly 2 years in prison this week after he repeatedly stalked one of his teenage students who he had become disturbingly infatuated with. While sources do not state when 53-year-old Graham Manzi first met 19-year-old Maisie Ralph, he reportedly became obsessed with her while teaching her how to drive. This obsession apparently continued to grow for some time, with Manzi attempting to give the teenager gifts through another student, and setting up social media accounts which were devoted to her. When he sent a long text message to Ralph outlining his, quote, strong feelings for her, her mother tried to put a stop to the behavior, telling him not to reach out to her daughter anymore and encouraging him to seek professional help. Instead of leaving Ralph alone, however, Manzi reportedly grew even more persistent, eventually joining a WhatsApp group meant for people living in her university residence building. He then reportedly drove more than 200 miles to the campus in York in October of last year, where Ralph was ironically studying psychology. Following this incident, Manzi was arrested and charged with stalking and was handed a 2-month suspended jail sentence in May of this year. As part of the sentence, a restraining order was issued against him. However, to the horror of Ralph and her roommates, just 9 days after the sentence was handed down and the order was put in place, Manzi once again showed up at their campus. He was spotted on the night of May 27th, sitting under a tree outside their residence at around 11:20 p.m. He was reportedly in possession of more than one bladed weapon and was sobbing. After this was reported to police, the 53-year-old was arrested once again. This week, Manzi was sentenced to 20 months in prison after pleading guilty to breaching the restraining order against him and possessing a blade. Following the decision, Ralph said that she was pleased and said that she hopes that she can now get her life back on track. According to reports, due to the stress of the stalking, she had been diagnosed with an eating disorder and is currently undergoing therapy. Authorities in the central region of Ghana say that they have made an arrest in the murder of a 22-year-old student nurse this week, after her body was found concealed in the house of a local chief in the town of Mankessim. According to reports, the incident began sometime last week when 22-year-old Georgina Asor-Bachwe went to a job interview in the city of Cape Coast, located about 80 miles west of the capital of Accra. When she failed to return, friends and family became concerned, and subsequent attempts to reach her by phone were unsuccessful. Over the next several days, an investigation into Georgina's disappearance was conducted, and information about her was circulated in the hopes that she would be discovered alive and safe. Sadly, these hopes were destroyed this week, following the arrest of a church pastor who admitted to being involved in the case. The pastor, who has not been identified by name, told police that he had participated in kidnapping and killing Georgina, a crime which he claimed had been planned by a local chief in the town of Mankessim. The town is located about 20 miles east of Cape Coast. After confessing to his involvement, the pastor reportedly led police to the place where he and the chief, later identified as Nana Clark Onyae, had concealed Georgina's body. She had reportedly been buried inside one of Clark's apartments and was exhumed by police on September 20th. Several personal items allegedly belonging to the 22-year-old, including her bag and shoes, were also found at the residence. At the time of this recording, Clark remains at large, and police are currently trying to track him down. The situation is still developing. Authorities in the Thai province of Nakhon Pathom say that a woman was the victim of a terrifying kidnapping at the hands of her bitter ex-husband this week, an attack that was partially captured on her home security camera. According to reports, the situation began at around 10:25 p.m. on September 20th, when the victim, identified only by the name Wisaruda, was relaxing at home in an unspecified part of the province. All of a sudden, she was jolted out of her calm state when her ex-husband, identified by the name Jirawat, violently tore through one of the thin walls of her home and leapt inside. Though Wisaruda screamed for help, this proved futile, as she was pulled through her home by the neck. She was then dragged to Jirawat's waiting vehicle while still in a headlock. After Wisaruda was forced inside, the pair drove off. According to Wisaruda, after being kidnapped, her ex-husband took her to Phetchaburi province in western Thailand. Once there, he took her to multiple places, including one of the province's coastal districts, as well as a national park. Luckily for Wisaruda, she managed to escape at some point and was able to make it to a police station to report what had happened. When questioned, Wisaruda explained that she and Jirawat had previously been together for 6 years. The first couple of years of their relationship had been more or less normal, but after that, her ex's violent tendencies began to emerge. She said that they broke up for a while and got back together, but eventually she had had enough. 3 months ago, she informed Jirawat that she was done with him for good. Wisaruda claimed that the motive behind the kidnapping had been Jirawat's jealousy. Though she told him that she was leaving him because of his violent behavior towards her, he didn't believe her, and was allegedly convinced that she was in love with someone else. Wisaruda told police this was actually the second time Jirawat had kidnapped her. Despite all of this, it's currently unclear if Jirawat will be facing any real consequences for his actions. Though he was arrested at the time the kidnapping was brought to the attention of police, according to local media reports, Wisaruda subsequently declined to press any charges. Officials in Ecuador are struggling to deal with the fallout from a horrific law enforcement scandal this week after a young mother and lawyer was allegedly brutally murdered by her husband inside a police training school in the country's capital. According to reports, the incident began sometime on September 11th when 34-year-old Maria Belén Bernal Otavalo went to a police training school in the city of Quito. She was there to visit her husband, Police Lieutenant Germán Cáceres, who reportedly worked at the training school as an instructor. After that, Maria was never heard from again. The 34-year-old was reported missing the following day by her husband, but reportedly only at the insistence of her mother, who demanded to know what had happened to her. When an investigation began, more disturbing details started to emerge. It turned out that during the time Maria was in her husband's room at the facility, shouts believed to be hers could be heard coming from inside. Some later reported that they had thought they heard her shouting, quote, "Help, he's killing me." Despite this, no one allegedly tried to intervene in the situation directly. One cadet who attempted to notify his superior about what was going on was reportedly ordered not to get involved in, quote, husband and wife messes. Sadly, on September 21st, it was reported that Maria's remains had been discovered on a hill approximately 3 miles from the police training school. Currently, an official autopsy has yet to be performed. However, investigators say they were able to positively identify Maria thanks to her clothing and a distinctive tattoo. The horrific crime has prompted protests in the capital, with many calling out law enforcement over the fact that the crime happened within the confines of a police training school, as well as the perceived lack of seriousness with which incidents of violence against women are treated in the country more broadly. While Germán Cáceres is the prime suspect in the murder investigation, at the time of this recording, he remains at large. He reportedly went on the run shortly after giving an initial statement to police. Local media reports suggest that up to 12 other officers may also be facing charges in connection with the case, including a female cadet who is alleged to have a, quote, special friendship with Cáceres. Officials in Japan's Mie Prefecture say that a politician could soon potentially find himself facing charges after a bizarre incident involving bicycles recently caused a minor scandal in a local town. According to reports, the situation began on August 16th when a contract worker in the town of Komono noticed something strange while on the job. The worker had been tasked with collecting abandoned and illegally parked bicycles in the area for impound. However, when he got to a local train station, he noticed something odd. Though the station itself had a free parking lot for bicycles, in the vicinity of the station, there were a large number of bikes that were clustered together on the side of the street. Even stranger, all of the bikes had been overturned, with their wheels pointing up in the air. The contract worker reported the incident, and soon news of the strange discovery even made its way to the town's mayor, Takayuki Shibata. Only, instead of being surprised by the situation, Shibata reportedly said, "Yeah, that was me." According to Shibata, starting in July, parking bicycles overnight at the train station had been prohibited. So from that point on, he had personally taken it upon himself to do something about those who disobeyed the new rule. Every morning, he would go to the free parking lot, pick up any bikes that were there, and carry them to the spot where he had dumped them upside down. Understandably, many people had questions for Shibata about this bizarre behavior, prompting a town meeting that was held on September 12th. During the proceedings, one of the town's councilors suggested that the mayor's actions had been a little extreme, and said that he could potentially be charged with damaging property. Another town councilor pointed out that the place where Shibata had chosen to leave the bikes was also private property, and that he could be slapped with illegal dumping. For his part, the mayor apparently seemed totally unfazed by the whole thing. Clapping back, he said, quote, "First of all, bicycles are not garbage. These bicycles were infringing on the rights of townspeople." He also claimed that he wouldn't do it anymore, and said that he never thought it would create such a fuss in the first place. As for why he had placed all of the bikes upside down, Shibata said that there was a simple explanation. He said that most of the bikes were locked, so it was easier to carry them by their frames upside down. He said that because he'd sometimes move as many as 30 bikes per day, he got tired, so he never bothered turning them back over when he dumped them because it was too much effort. According to reports, the whole thing is even more silly when you consider that the train station at the heart of the whole bizarre pseudo-scandal was already planning to build more free bike parking in the first place. By next spring, there will be 4 times as many spots available for people to use. Authorities in Brazil's federal district say that a 37-year-old man is finally in custody this week after he brutally attacked his wife during the middle of the night because of a dream he had. According to reports, the incident began on the night of August 9th, when the 37-year-old suspect and his wife of 13 years were asleep in bed. At some point, the man had a dream that his wife was having an affair, and when he awoke, he was so angered by the idea that he grabbed a knife, woke his wife up, and began to interrogate her. This understandably led to an argument, but eventually, the wife was able to reassure her husband that nothing was going on, and he was simply being ridiculous. Or so she thought. After his wife fell back asleep a second time, the 37-year-old man continued to seethe about his dream, and eventually worked himself back up into a fury. This time, however, he allegedly wasn't interested in talking, and simply began attacking his wife. Grabbing the knife again, the man proceeded to stab the woman in the neck, the collarbone, and the hands multiple times, though thankfully, she was able to escape and get help. She was treated at a local hospital and survived. By the time police went to the house, the 37-year-old man had fled. The suspect managed to evade authorities for over a month, until he was reportedly captured and placed under arrest sometime this week. He is now facing charges for attempted femicide. While the case is both horrifying and ridiculous, it makes a little more sense when you know that this is not the first time the 37-year-old man has been in trouble with the law. According to multiple reports, he already has a previous criminal record for homicide in the Brazilian state of Goiás. At the time of this recording, neither the 37-year-old man or his wife's names have been released. Authorities in the Bolivian capital of Sucre say that a 29-year-old woman has been sentenced for the murder of her own young daughter this week, after she reportedly killed the child to cover up her infidelity. According to reports, the incident began back on April 17, 2020, when the 29-year-old, identified only by the name Giovanna M.M., returned home and alerted her husband that something was terribly wrong. She said that she had found their 8-year-old daughter unresponsive inside. While police were initially unsure about what had happened, as more information emerged about the child's death and they began to dig deeper, they started to suspect that Giovanna was involved. It turned out that her daughter had ingested a powerful insecticide, which had caused her death. Believing that it was unlikely that the girl would have done this on her own, police continued to investigate, only for Giovanna to finally confess to what she had done. According to Giovanna, shortly before her death, her daughter had learned that she was cheating on her father. Terrified that she would reveal her secret, the mother forced the 8-year-old to ingest the insecticide, before altering the crime scene in the hopes that it would appear that she had taken her own life. She left the house and came back shortly after to make it look like she had stumbled across her daughter's body by complete chance. This week, Giovanna was sentenced to 30 years in prison for the horrific crime. Before we wrap up, we'd like to take a minute to thank our amazing supporters over on Patreon. As many of you are aware, our situation on YouTube always seems to be a bit uncertain, but our patrons help to ensure that we can continue to make content like this long term without having to worry as much about what surprises might be thrown our way. Plus, Patrons also get access to 4 additional stories per week for each of our Crimes of the Week and Crimes of the Week International videos. If you'd like to help support the channel directly, head over to patreon.com/crimezone to join. You can also find that link in the description below. As always, thank you so much for watching, and take care.